Out.
Stand by. 10 seconds. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good evening, folks.
Good evening, everyone.
Just to confuse everybody, Alex has transformed into a Viking for the night.
Yes, yes. I'm not the Viking this evening.
Yes. Tonight, Alex, I'll be playing Jim the Viking. We may be having.
Wait, that was a little bit Caribbean.
Well, okay. You could be a Caribbean Viking. I'm sure they probably had them. I'm sure Hollywood Television did.
Well, I've read there's a really interesting article just a couple of days ago. Apparently, the patron saint of Talk Like a Pirate Day is a very early British actor that was told to portray a pirate in a pirate film, like back in the black and white.
I know who you're talking about. Do you know why pirate jokes are bad puns?
Okay, bring it.
Nobody knows. You just
okay, I fell for that one.
The one. Okay, why does a pirate take so long to learn the alphabet? Because he spends so long at sea. You couldn't tell that I used to work
I thought I was going to catch you out here with the pirate stuff, but apparently you came loaded.
You couldn't tell that I used to work on the pirate rides at Legoland, could you? Actually, I think I know who you're talking. Unless you are going to do things conflated, I know who you're talking about. The patron saint. You're talking about an actor called Robert Newton.
Yeah, I think that was the name. Yeah.
His interestingly, it's more that because my brain's now switched off here. Very well known Tony Hancock. Tony Hancock, very well known British radio and TV comedian. He started life apparently as an understudy doing Robert Newton impersonations. But Robert Newton, as you say, Robert Newton was employed to play Long John Silver in the earliest Disney, Talk of Treasure Island, yeah. And despite how it was written in the book, he decided to play Long John Silver like that. Pirate
he went full of British dialect, like an obscure one that it wasn't so common, and he brought that to life. And ever since then, it's become the whole pirate theme.
Yeah, it's literally that is literally why we think of it. Do you know why? Since we're talking similar connection, do you know why all frogs say ribbit, ribbit, ribbit?
I always consider, since I'm phonetically different coming from Sweden and Scandinavia, we have different sayings for different animals like that. But ribbit is, for me, the introduction. Okay, ribbit, that is ribbit, English. Ribbit, ribbit, ribbit.
Yeah. The answer is they don't, of course, but the reason we think they do is because that's what the frogs in Florida sound like, and where in Florida and around Los Angeles that sound like, and where do Hollywood go to get their sound bites as much as they can? Well, they go down to the nearest forest. So Hollywood in the early days goes out there, they get animal sounds
So you're
from-
telling me
from all
that
the
Hollywood
place.
used to go out to the Everglades and whatnot in Florida?
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know about Florida. I was just thinking for some reason I'm connecting frogs with Florida, but certainly because on the West Coast it's probably more like Los Angeles, isn't it? But I'm not sure how many frogs you get out there. But yeah, basically it's a Southwest American frog spoke like that. And what happened was that they went out, they did outdoor recordings to get actual sounds of frogs, and they put that in the movies. And then the movies get played around the world. Disney in particular gets played around the world. So everyone thinks that all pirates talk like that because that's how Long John Silver talked, and everyone picked up after it. Oh, you mad? And everybody thinks that all the everybody's impression is that all frogs out there saying ribbit, 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 because that's what American frogs do, and that's the ones that the early sound recordings were based on.
I haven't really thought about it. But nice, Jacko. Nice to see you again. A while. I hope you're doing well.
If they're frogs from Hollywood, they're definitely saying useless.
Well, for me, the most perfect ever animal translation must come from Nemo, where you have the seagulls or gulls just going, whine, whine, whine. Because I can hear that whether I'm in Brighton or in Blackpool at the pier, wherever I am. Even here in Sweden, I can hear the gulls just going, whine, whine, whine. So I think that is one of the most perfect universal, how does an animal sound?
Yeah. I think if I remember correctly, I think onomatopoeia is a word that sounds like it's pronounced like spelt like hiss. I think I could be wrong.
It sounds like what it is describing. If
Yeah,
I remember it
yeah.
correctly.
I think that's what onomatopoeia is. What Sadako is mentioning there. Yeah, it's a sound. So thunk, clunk, anything like that sort of sound. You really know what it is because it says what it is, if you like.
Well, I discovered that during my early years before IT became more popular. I obviously had to do a little bit of the, should we say, roughneck works. And the people, the really senior ones that were trying to teach us how to do stuff, hey, you just do it until it sounds clunk.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not an accurate measurement. Just do it until it sounds clunk.
Well,
when you've done it a few times, you do recognize that specific sound, and it sounds like clunk, and you know it's secured, it's in there, it's ready to go.
That's the thing. That's the thing. It's experience. You know, when something exactly right, that's exactly the sound it makes. It's not quite. You know, whatever it is you're tightening up, there's not quite enough space for it to ring, but there's enough for it to make just enough of vibrate, make a bit of clunk rather than a clunk or something like that. Yeah, I can definitely understand that.
Yeah, and even in that, you said clunk and clong. Very uniquely different sounds. So if you're doing something that you know, okay, that was not the good sound. Like my friend's been joking about me having my birthday recently. I'm saying I'm getting a little bit old, and they going, all of them are 2-3 years older than I am, but they go, you're still a youngster. I countered with Armin, if I am so young, how come my knees are making such loud noises every time I try to stand up?
Oh well, apparently, I now know what you should do if you've got bad knees. Apparently,
you got wisdom.
No, you should give up acting and you should go and take up ballet.
Ow! I didn't even need to think about the movement in ballet before the ouch just went in through my mind.
I didn't, but did you get the reference for that?
Yeah.
A certain actor who has recently apparently retired from his role because he's getting too old at 32. His knees hurt, so he's going to go and do ballet. Honestly, you really couldn't make it up.
Okay.
Really couldn't.
No, it's not something I would not want to try. And
No.
I think visually it's explained absolutely brilliantly by James Cameron in Titanic ballet, because Rose DeWitt Bukater, they have the drinking competition. You have proper drunk Irish and whatnot, and they're doing arm wrestling or whatever it is. And she goes, "Oh, you think you're tough?" And she takes a smoke, a fag for us UK people, smokes it, and then she does this plie, I think it's called, where you literally stand on the tip of your big toes.
Yeah.
And so I can't do that. I've tried a few times because curiosity. It's like, nope. It's like, I'm not going any further. I will break things.
This is one of these odd things I find that for some reason male ballet dancers and male dancers in particular, I don't know if it's true or not, but they tend to have a reputation for being effeminately gay. And yet, if you think about it, dancing and ballet, they have to be quite fit and quite controlled to do that. Especially with something like ballet, if you're lifting people up and these sort of things. So there's aspects to that which don't necessarily fit with which, if you think about it, you go, but hold on a second, that doesn't make them seem,
I think I'm gonna be over the top crass here, but I've seen some of the movements that they have a special name within ballet and everything. They're not meant to be crass, but ever since I heard the phrasing from the Orange Man Bad first run, grab them by the P word.
Grab them by the Mrs. Slocum.
Yes, but there are a lot of, because you have to have the balance and everything, and what dancing is you have to understand the anatomy of a body, where the center of gravity is and everything. And unfortunately, some of the movements will require you to go quite personal. But even so, I think the control in there, and if I think it would either attract people not curious, so we would probably say to people that may lean toward the same gender, and the others that I'll take any chance to grab it, which are the horrible predators that we should definitely get rid of. So I don't know, but because for me, dancing, my ex loves dancing. I do mean it. It is everything from strictly dancing to everything. But for me, dancing does absolutely nothing. The only reason I learned how to do waltz and even what's the American one, line dancing, I learned them because it made her happy. But for me, it does nothing.
Well, I used to watch. Well, my late mother used to watch Strictly, and I quite enjoy watching it. I don't do anything like as much as we used to, but I enjoy dancing. We used to do. We still do in our shows. We do medieval dancing, and late medieval dancing, and so I'm way too old and way too unfit to do a lot of it, but I enjoy doing it, and it's very. I mean, we used to say, one of the things we tend to say is that, again, if Alex were here, he'd press the button for the 20 minutes of history now. But we used to say that there's nothing wrong. That one of the things you do with dancing, fight it or squires and young men in Parthenon will learn to dance for several reasons, one of which being he taught them control and especially taught them footwork. Because there's some quite intricate footwork in medieval type dancing.
You see, I see much more, even though A Knight's Tale is majorly, mostly a piss take of history. It is also not, because it's trying to make too much fun of it, but at the same time is taking so much truth and dragging it in to making fun of it. And the whole dancing, the courtship, the in courtship is because he was at court.
Yeah.
Is the whole thing. You have to show that, you just don't know how to do, say, astronomy or warfare or knighthood or chivalry or all of these things. You also have to show this thing. And it was all part just of a play. And I think they portrayed quite well, despite the fact that they're doing an entire 1990s modern dance show of
I'm going to have to watch that again, yeah.
Yeah, it's still brilliant, but it's just there for performative. It's not there for you. It's there for everybody else.
I'm not saying conflicting views. I can split bad history movies and shows into two things. Something like Braveheart, which is just atrociously bad history where they get all their facts wrong, and they put it up and they make it that it's real. And you get something like A Knight's Tale or Blackadder, where it's humorous, it's meant, so you don't take it. And yet Blackadder, for example, one of the things you're saying about the dancing is, there's a lot of things. You're absolutely right with the courting thing. Literally, is where it comes from. Because that was possibly the only chance you were going to get, or one of the rare chances you were going to get to meet and impress other people of your social status. And if you're a man, you're impressing a little bit. You're getting to meet because you're getting to look at women, you're getting to talk to women, which you don't get to do so much when you're back in your own estates. And B, you're showing off. Look, you've got. One thing a lot of people go right with the costume. I have trouble getting out of my hose if my legs have swelled up because they're tight, because medieval hose are tight. They're in fact, I could go on a rant about not a rant. I could go on a tangent about the fact that they're called hose and how that connects to modern day hosiery. Tights are, or stockings are basically medieval hose. Tights and stockings are basically medieval hose, just shrunk down. Basically, the same thing. It's called hose, and hose is the same thing. But you would it showed off. It would show off that you've got good muscles. You've got a muscular. You're not in armor. You're in clothes, and if you're in something like that, you're in clothes that are designed to show off what you've got. You're in clothes that are designed to show off that you've got money. It's just why you've got.
We had a similar description in Sweden. It was if you were fat, you were sexy because you had money enough to eat food to make you fat.
Well, there's things. There's also things about things like about, I can't remember which way it goes down, but it's about being pale and being dark skinned and the rest of it. Because if you were a noble, you spend a lot of your time indoors. And if you were a peasant worker, which 80 to 90% of the population was, quote, peasant, unquote, i.e. they weren't nobles and they weren't clerics. So as everybody else, London outside. So you spend your time doing this. You spend your time. You are showing off. I've got a my real posh gear is it's long green semi velvet buttons on top, and it's got long sleeves, and it's actually got what called tappets, I think they're called. You see them a lot with medieval women's clothing, where you've got long sleeves, right? I should have two sets of sleeves, or you'll have a long sleeve, and then you'll have a bit of sleeve hanging down from about halfway between the elbow and the shoulder, literally just between. It's there for the soul. So look, I can afford to waste this. I'm that rich. I can afford to waste this. There's a thing in which people call them in Blackadder, in the first Blackadder, which very few people watch very often. I haven't watched it in a while, I must admit. Where there's one bit where Edmund turns up with ridiculously large shoes that are so big and so long that literally the points are literally turned back up and tied to his knee.
Yeah.
Thing is, that ain't an exaggeration. They were worse than that at times. It was a case of show off what I've got. Yeah, bad tea shows you. Well, we might you. Yes, exactly. When sugar came in around, bad tea shows you had money for sugar or other sweetening things.
Well, pastry and stuff like that. They were literally, I can afford this nonsense, and therefore I can show it off. And I think we were probably a lot more bastards back then than we are now. Bragging today, I don't think is as bad as bragging back then, because back then it really meant something. It's like, oh, look, I just got sugar canes from Jamaica.
Yeah.
I got to get these fancy desserts and everything. And oh, you had never heard of tomato or something like that.
Yeah. We're moving out of my area, but yeah, Miranda, there's Kel, there's the wedding dress is an interesting one, because a lot of the time you wouldn't necessarily wear the wedding dress, particularly white wedding dress. When it came in and came out for colours, the idea of white meaning purity, that basically comes from Queen Victoria. A lot of our ideas come from there. Historians tend to be in two minds about the Victorians. If their history interests are beyond the historians, they absolutely detest it. They detest the Victorians because they got everything. Because it's the Victorians' fault that we have Vikings with horns on their helmets. Yeah, exactly.
Who do I need to kill?
Yes, I know. Well, the Vikings in early Hollywood. Sorry, the Victorians in early.
It came from the opera.
Yeah. Victorians romanticize history a lot.
Yes.
But we still have. But they I get somewhat. They studied it. They had an interest in it. Robin Hood, for example. Robin Hood goes back and forth. Like King Arthur's a much better figure than Robin Hood, if we can actually trace where his stories come from. But I did
But both of them are still mythical. But
I did an entire thing with that about 4 years ago.
And Arthur does.
Yeah, but the thing is that Robin Hood seems to go. They both go in and out. But Robin Hood actually is not. I don't think he's that well known. He actually comes back. He comes back into the into what you might call sort of modern or relatively modern consciousness as a bit part player in a book by Sir Walter Scott called Ivanhoe.
Oh yeah, that one can be quite tricky, because here in Scandinavia, on I don't know what it's called. It's like the 6th of January is like the 13th day of Christmas, where you're supposed to throw the Christmas tree out and everything. We do have the 1960s version of Ivanhoe on at all times.
Oh, yeah.
It's a 3.5 hour film or whatever it is, but everybody's kind of watching it because it's just something to do because it's one of
I
those lockdown days. There's no stores open or anything.
I
But
have
I think we know it quite well, and I
I,
would not tie Ivanhoe to neither Lionheart nor Robin Hood.
well, no. The thing is that a Robin Hood in the book, Robin Hood makes a bit. I've got three really great things to say about Ivanhoe.
Yeah,
It will surprise no one when I say that those things are Elizabeth Taylor, Olivia Hussey, and Victoria Smurfit. These are three different
still
versions of
they look
Ivanhoe,
cursed.
actually.
They
Interestingly,
look cursed despite extremely conservative dressing.
two Rebeccas in a Rowena. But no, but it's interesting. Yeah, Miranda's mentioned kilts and druids. Okay, calm down, take a deep breath, do not swear
Just
at
like
the
white
baby.
wedding dresses showed you had enough money to buy a
Yeah,
dress, you would only wear one.
yeah.
Well,
Some of that.
the one thing that I understand, at least from
But
the Scandinavian history, is the color blue until mid 19th century. Color blue was a really expensive color to get hold of.
what's the other? So it's
But
interesting.
it's a weird thing because it isn't following in Swedish uh, marital ceremonies. Don't think I've heard it in British UK, but in America you need to borrow something blue.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, if I ever get invited to another wedding, the next one, which may possibly be my youngest niece's, apparently, I'm going to have real problems when someone says something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, because I'm going to expect the TARDIS to appear, because I think that was one of the best lines in You Who. Description for the when you look back over it, the setup for that line was great. The actual, you don't realise that they're setting up that line for Amy, and this is, what is it? Something old,
Something
something
old,
new,
something new, something
something
borrowed, something
borrowed,
blue.
something very blue. And the way she says it, and you think, well, yeah, it probably describes it. But yeah, what was about
The blue color would be lost on most modern British
mm,
people
yeah.
because we don't have the blue boxes anymore, do we?
No, you don't. But the thing is, what's concerned was, it's interesting what is and isn't expected. You're right about, because I'm not sure. Blue was a very one of the things that medievalists hate is when you see descriptions of the Middle Ages as dull, grey, and colourless. Medieval people loved their colours. All states, everybody did. Everybody. We had yellow and green were very good because you could get, the dyes were easy. The most expensive dyes were purple, which is why the Romans, for example, it was an imperial colour, imperial purple, because it was so rich. And black. My local, if anybody saw the White Queen, the father in that, Elizabeth, what's his name? Father in that was the Earl Rivers. Now an ancestor of his, no, sorry, a descendant of his. I keep when these one around. A descendant of his fought in the English Civil War. And in fact, his regiment is my local regiment for, still not for the English Civil War enacting guys, but he went bankrupt because back in the day in the 17th century, your colonel, you supplied your guys with everything, and your own money. His guys wore black, and black dye was so expensive that he went bankrupt.
Well,
Because
most
of it.
people forget that we're still operating under the kind of feudal society. So slavery is the easiest way to describe it. It wasn't exactly slavery. Serfdom is a completely different, separate
Yeah.
part from it, which is why I hate that people say, Vikings had slaves. Well, first we weren't Vikings. Vikings is an activity that you do. We were Norsemen.
Yeah.
And the people that were captured, they were actually prisoners of war that had the right to earn their freedom. Long story. But
Oh,
if we're
so
coming up
you
to the more modern battle and warfare, it's
yeah.
the earls or the landowners, whatever you want to put them. It wasn't just the fact that they needed to bring soldiers when the king called them. They needed to clothe them, feed them,
Hmm.
equip them, get them ready, train them, do the whole package.
Well, this is why it's why and I mean, it's really interesting things you how these things, how we get things all the way around. These days, if we think of a knight, especially if we think medieval, late medieval historical period for knight, we a think we a think something that looks a bit like a Cyberman on a horse, which is end stage armor, but we automatically think I might come back to the kilts and druids things if I can actually steel myself to mention the B word, that Scottish film, that we automatically think knights are an important rank of society and are rich. It's actually the other way
No,
around.
you could be a poor knight.
Oh,
There's
no,
even
no,
a dish here
yeah,
in Sweden. There's a
yeah.
dish here in Sweden, and I'm pretty sure the rest of Europe is probably going to call something posh French stuff. But we have a dish in Sweden called poor knight's meal.
Hmm.
And what it is you put butter in a pan, and then you take a loaf of bread, sprinkle some sugar on it, and fry it. So
Well,
you
yeah,
get
but
carbs on carbs on carbs, very sweet tasting with buttery taste. That's it. And it's called the poor knight.
well, you get them. I mean, there are things. There's you get the problem is you've got sort of stages of things. Everything else. We look at it back here. We look at it back from 500 to 1,000 years in the future, or in our past. You know, this 500,000 years away from us, and it all gets pushed together. But yes, you can. Where a lot of your poor knights came from, for example, would be when you're getting towards the Crusader areas, you're getting your knightly orders. They take vows of, and you do get all that. But the reason it starts off is that it's not that you have to. It's not that if you're rich you become a knight. It's in order to buy all the stuff you need to be a knight, the armor, the horse, and all that. You have to have a bit of money. So
No,
you
that's actually not entirely true. At least not here in the Scandinavian part. You were considered a knight if you were the one technically just in charge, the one that managed to step up and take responsibility
I
for an
suppose it's good.
area.
I suppose
Yeah,
it's good.
after that we started to get the bloodlines and the whole thing,
Yeah.
but
I mean, yeah,
the
that's where the
initial
debate comes
formation,
into, yeah.
because just like United Kingdom, which is a absolutely ancient country, most of the cities which require certain specifications are from plus 400 years BC, before Christ.
Mm.
Same with Scandinavia, even though we're a much younger nation. The Stockholm region, the capital of Sweden, was founded in the 11th century,
Mm.
and
Well,
that's after all consolidation and all the battles and everything, and the fact that we had 300 years of Viking stuff going on before that. So it has a lot more ancient history to that. So people that became knights, and it's not royalty. What was it called? What's the level just
aristocracy.
below? Aristocracy. Yes.
Aristocracy. Yeah.
Yeah. So the
Well, this.
aristocracy underneath it didn't need you to be rich or resourceful. Kind of doubtful. Resourceful for me is someone that can actually make use of what they have, whereas someone thinks as resourceful is, oh, I got an oil well and I got this and I got that, and therefore suddenly I'm rich. No, the resourceful one is that someone that can use what they have
Yeah.
to make more
Mm.
than what was there to begin with.
We've got this is why we like to occasionally take the gently rib our cousins across the pond, because we know that they've got a sense of humor, can take it. That a lot of our cities and buildings are older than their country. At which they then respond to something similarly pithy about America, which is perfectly fine, because we take it as the gentle ribbing that they mean it. But yeah, but I think
It's like you say, it's gentle ribbing.
The other thing you've also got to think is that at the risk of now, do I get distracted? All I can say is read Jodie Taylor's I've forgotten what a series about time travel was called now. Chronicles of St. Mary's. Great books, but there's some interesting stories and thoughts about that, Kelly. I'll be interested to see what this thing was, what you were saying, because as someone pointed out, when Edward IV killed or had Henry VI killed, they produced his body. They showed his body. Right. The easiest way for Richard to prove without a doubt that he was the legitimate king would have been for him to produce the bodies of the princes. It would have been easy enough to do. People died, children died, even in 1480s, 15th century, people died were still alive quite young. Probably Miranda. I think he did. I can't remember. There's a lot going on in these things about those ones. But yeah, there's a lot of things in and about these ones. If you get a chance to sort of sit down, and there's a few things out there. There's some really good history channels. I keep discovering them here and there, new ones again, that talk a lot about these things to make you think that why did, if Richard did kill the princes in the tower, why didn't he produce their bodies and prove that they were dead instead of leaving people saying, well, they were still there? There's a lot of interest about that, plus the fact that as Miranda said earlier on, well, the whole problem with Richard III is William Shakespeare. Of course, Shakespeare was working for the I'm trying to make these dates right. He was working.
I've heard those conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Well, Churchill. Sorry, Shakespeare was working for the granddaughter of the guy that won at Bosworth Field. Don't forget, he was working for the granddaughter of Henry VII. Right. So his patrons were the ones who had a vested interest in saying, well, look, we were legitimately taken over from Henry, from Richard III, even though our connection is so far out there, it's in Wales. So there's...
That is just leading into a massive head scratcher on how.
Well, yeah, there is exactly.
Really form, but what I'm going to say to kind of smooth it into the whole thing is, I don't believe Shakespeare was just this amazing wordsmith that single-handedly added 5,000 words to the English vocabulary or anything. He was definitely behind the scenes funded by previous monarchies and royal families and connections and interest groups and whatnot, because they started realizing he's getting popular. We could go the old route and just off with his head, to kind of go very British with it, but they kind of realize they do have someone be able to deliver a complicated message, which
Well,
is why we're still studying the Shakespearean sonnets. They're called sonnets, aren't they?
sonnet to the
Uh,
poems, yeah.
Sonnets are a poem, but they're still being studied to
Hmm.
this date,
Well, good.
and trying to figure out what do they mean, where did that influence come from? Does that have something more hidden? And I hate it, because if someone is telling me a story, please be as straight and forward as possible as you can.
Yeah.
I want to know that I'm with PJ on this guy. I want my good guys to be a good guy, and I want my bad guy just to go get nuked off the planet by the good guy.
Yeah.
I'm slightly more there. I would like to know the reason why the bad guy
Not
should
not
deserve
much
getting
nudity in
nuked off.
Shakespeare's plays, but then again, yeah, I agree. Yeah. Oh, well, there's so much of that. There is so much of that sort of thing around that. I mean, Shakespeare had whoever or whatever Shakespeare was, whether he was one incredibly talented guy or others use a name
Or if he was like dumbass from France,
yeah,
Dumas.
or whatever he was, he had he had a massive effect on a language. The number of phrases that he's quoted. I mean, it's amazing. You can go through. Miranda mentioned Henry V there. You can go through just two speeches from Henry V, just two of them, or two parts of speeches, which are actually two different speeches, and people don't necessarily realise it. They're actually from either end of the Agincourt of that campaign. It starts off with once more unto the breach, dear friends, once more unto the breach, we'll seal the wall up with our English dead. That's from the Siege of Harfleur. Once more onto the breach is just everybody knows that, everybody recognises that. And you then you come down and you do this in Crispin's Day speech. And every other line in that speech,
upon this Saint Christian Day,
is common language. Tomorrow is the feast of Crispian. He that feasts with me upon this, fights with me upon his stands, come safe home. Shall yearly take. I can't remember all of it for both reasons. Shall yearly feast his neighbours. Then shall that command draw back his sleeves and say, "These scars I had upon Sir Crispin's Day." All men forget, yet all could be forget, but he'll be remembered with advantages what deeds he did that day. And gentlemen I'm missing bits and pieces. And gentlemen in England now abed will think themselves accursed they were not here. There are so many lines in that literally, if you're in the Anglosphere, or especially if you're English, you had an English education, or you're in the Anglosphere, or you Western Europe education, same classical, that holds their manhood cheap. Any that, gentlemen in England now abed will hold their manhoods cheap when speaks any who fought with us upon Sir Christmas Day.
Yeah. I would argue that that's the whole St. Christmas Day thing. It has such a cleverness to it. Also upon the cowards and the brave equally. But it is a very similar thing if we go forward to, because I hated Shakespeare and all of that old English writing and everything, but I loved Tolkien. And I recently got smashed hard on Twitter because someone just went, Tolkien was just a pretentious autist. Well, I don't care. He managed to phrase or string words together in a really clever and smart way that made you understand that
he was a linguist, wasn't he? So yeah, exactly. He understood
language, and not only did he go for just English, he actually went for Finnish. extremely hard language.
Yeah.
But I always love the Bilbo speech of today is my 111th day, and I like half of you half as well as you deserve, and less than half of you half as well as you like. And
Yeah.
most people that don't listen to how that is, they don't understand that it is underhanded insult,
Yeah.
but everybody listening, they can't really tell whether or not they're part of the people being insulted or the part of the people that are actually going, okay, he's okay with us, but none is reaching the level of, say, accepted.
Yeah.
It's just
Well,
going, you're okay, but that's it.
I mean, there's the thing is, there's no one knows what it's as far as I'm aware, it's not recorded what Henry said. Henry did go around the battlefield at Agincourt the evening before, and he did talk to various bits. Which he would have spoken to, not the way you see it in the film or the play, but he would have spoken to groups here and there rather than have one big speech. But no one knows what he said. We did that, but it came. But there's it even gets to the point that there's a series of books by John Ringo, science fiction books,
Okay.
called the Posley Moor. And at the last bit of the climax, it's about 3 or 4 book series. It's about 8 races, but at the climax of the last book is split into 2, a little bit like Harry Potter, and he ends one bit, and the last bit they're about to go into this major battle against the alien base, the big climax, and the hero he says something along the lines of when Henry V took his forces to Agincourt, he made a couple of remarks the night before, which went down in history. People looking back, what he said. People look back at us, they'll probably say these poor bastards, leave it like that. Rigo literally takes the Agincourt situation and says, okay, we expect to be killed tomorrow. Yeah, but it's that sort of thing. It's got that kind of effect. It's also
I feel it's a little bit of probably me being a modern man, so to speak. It's as I get older, and I know this is very cheesy. It's like, fuck it, let's find out what happens if I say it, rather than being polite and humble and going
well,
against absolutely everything. And I don't think this is understood outside of being born Swedish. I understand the argument going on in England at the moment that you're not British if you're not born and raised and family and tradition. I don't agree 100% with that, but I do understand a little bit of the notion of you do not understand certain Swedish things unless you've actually gone through them. And I'll give you the silliest thing that I can think of. That is the easiest thing for anyone from anywhere on the planet to come here and see. Every summer, by the midsummer time, we plant a cross into the ground with 2 circles. Now, you can imagine what 2 balls and a very long thingy might look like. And yes, it's very true. And yes, the Swedish culture does confirm that the Earth is Mother Earth. And we put this long thingy with 2 round thingies at the top of it into Mother Earth. Then we dance around it and sing about how happy the frogs are. Yes, you heard me correct. We sing about how happy the frogs are. Every midsummer, every solstice day, every year for the last 1,000 years we've been doing it.
Interesting.
So what I'm saying is there is certain things to understand where things come from.
I think a lot of things tend to get conflated, and I think all over the place. which I think something I think there is a difference between your ethnicity, your nationality, your race, which is kind of linked now, but not so much so. Your culture. You can be someone who comes into this country or is born in this country of parents who of first generation immigrant parents who then comes into this country. They're brought up to be British, have the same sort of age as most of them. Then, they may not be English by ethnic descent, but they are. I'm quite happy to call them as British. You know, it's a lot. There's a lot I think about these things, because identity can get very confused. What's what? In answer to Miranda's question, there, I don't know that he went around in disguise. I don't think he would have needed to. He might have done.
I think that's a Shakespearean myth, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it may well be something that Shakespeare, because otherwise, because you look at it, for example. I mean, the one that comes to mind is the what's his name? The Kenneth Branagh version of Henry V film.
Well, I'm going to stop you before you go too deep on that, because I'm thinking back throughout history, and sadly, us humans aren't that imaginative. Usually, something has to happen to become a story, to then become a myth, to become a legend, to maybe become a children's story or something like that. So, if I'm thinking of the earliest one, I would imagine would be Mulan, where a royal woman decides to kind of hide as a man in the troops because she feels that she can serve it better by being on the front line. Rightly or wrongly, there are many other complexities around it, but still the whole thing of I would like to add value or something, and I can see if I was a ruler and so disconnected from people and constantly just having people sucking up to me, the first thing I would want to do is disguise myself as humble.
Several of the Roman emperors are supposed to have done that. I doubt any of them did. But I mean, it's if you think about it, I think the suggestion would probably be that he went round. If he was doing that, if he did go around disguise, I don't know if it's the sort of thing that he would have done anyway. As a medieval king, but it would probably been to get what people say. Because if you think about it, I mean, the Agincourt or it actually starts when he's going around and he hears Brian Blessed, I think. One of the knights there, one of the major knight, one of the major leaders, the earls, says something about wishing he had more men, because the French outnumbered them massively, right? They outnumbered them there were so many different figures. They outnumbered them by 3, somewhere to 3 to 1 and 20 to 1. The English were massively outnumbered. The French still haven't learned. They outnumbered us at Crécy. They outnumbered us at Poitiers. They still haven't learned. And then this guy says, I think it's Sussex, or I think about basically, I wish we got more. And then Henry comes and says, no, don't. We're plenty. If we win tomorrow, there's enough glory to go around. If we lose tomorrow, then everybody's going to need to back home. And if we lose tomorrow, the less the Englishmen that are killed, the better. The more of us we lose, this sort of thing. And that's when he goes and says, in fact, anybody that doesn't want to be here, go home. I'll pay for them to go home now. If you don't want to be here, go home. Bog off. I don't want anybody here that doesn't want to be here, basically. And then he goes into the tomorrow, etc. That's what that whole thing is about. But he starts off with him saying, have we got many? So whether he went around in disguise or not, I don't know. I know interesting.
I can see much value within it, but then again, I'm classically trained doing the whole thing,
Yeah,
conscription service and everything, which
yeah.
was mandatory when I was growing up.
Well, again,
Fortunately enough, my brothers did not have to do it because they kind of skipped it or scrapped it
well, I
just
mean,
after my year batch. Yeah, I know it sounds bad, but my year batch was literally the last one where it was mandatory.
some had to be.
But
Well,
we got the classic whole Sun Tzu training and everything,
and
and it's
some of the,
useful to both know what is going on with the morale with your own
hmm,
troops, but it's also useful to sometimes show yourself as the god. You are the general. So if you think of the
yeah,
opening scene to Gladiator, where Maximus
hmm,
is literally just walking among the troops and just, "Hi, how you doing? Doing all right? Everything's fine." That simple thing is raising morale, and morale can never be
hmm.
underestimated when it
Oh,
comes to a
definitely,
battle.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would think that may be what Henry was doing because it's. I mean, you've got to remember he may be 1480s, no 1415. Henry, he's still a medieval king. He's king under God.
Yeah,
This is, in fact, because he wins at Agincourt. You could say that his victory at Agincourt kind
yeah,
of leads into the Wars of the Roses because he wins at Agincourt. He ends up. I mean, there's more to it than that. There's Bodade on the Lotus Eaters did, and unfortunately they seem to have changed their thing, so you have to be a silver member to actually download now. But he did about 4 or 5 part thing on Henry V,
yeah.
which
Wow.
really fun. But the things because what happens? I mean, just literally in the years before he goes back in 1413, he comes back in 1415, and he goes back after and he comes back a couple of years later. He goes back and forth to France, several between that. He ends up he marries the daughter of King Philip of France, Philip or John, the King of France. The problem is one of the problems of French Empire is that the king is nuts. The King of France is I don't know if there's any serious words. Basically, he goes in and out of reality, if you like. Is he not supposed to say something? Thinking he's actually made of glass. Things like this. He's serious solutions, etc. Oh yeah, I was saying, and I think he's the one who thinks he's made of glass. But what this means, of course, is that his daughter's fine. But whether it's something that just runs to the male line or skips it or whatever, Henry VI, Henry V's son, has got this. So because Henry V marries the daughter of the King of France, that brings this particular condition into the English bloodline, which the problem with Henry VI, which is why the Cousins War, the Wars of Roses starts in large part because Henry VI is not all there literally not there a lot of the time. But it's so that's that's an interesting thing that comes in there. Miranda mentioned the Oriflame. Yeah, exactly. We're going back to an
Yeah.
earlier comment about really interesting. I mean, this is one of the things we tend to tell people towards the end of a show, especially if we're archers. Yeah, the archers killed a lot of people at Agincourt. Probably we didn't kill all of them with our bows and arrows. The Oriflame is a French standard of war. If anybody's not aware of it, it's literally a big flame-shaped banner, and it basically meant no quarter, no mercy. So the French flying this, they're saying, "Fine, we're going to wipe you out." So the English say, "Right, fine, you want to do that? We've got nothing to lose." He takes a lot of prisoners captive. Interesting. It's one of these really things that you can really get interested in talking to people if they're interested, but things that you don't realise. How important a lot of things like heraldry was in the Middle Ages. You don't want to kill. If someone's got rich, you don't want to kill them. You want to capture them, take their parole, and then get their
because rich
ransom.
were actually worth a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean,
it is literally like today capturing Elon Musk and being able to ransom him for everything he owns and then some.
Literally, the phrase is a king's ransom.
Yeah.
I mean, we go back to. I mean, obviously, I'm a medieval archer. These battles are on my mind a lot. But you go back to Poitiers, which is 1356, 10 years after Crécy. We beat the French again. We actually captured Edward III. Actually captured the King of France. Right? He's treated very well because he's a king. He's walked back and he's given a suite in the Tower of London. Now, the Tower of London is not a prison. Actually becomes later on. It is a royal palace. It has, even when you get the likes of Anne Boleyn is executed in the Tower, she still lived before she's executed. She lived in a set of suites. She's not a dank chained in a cell. But he comes back to England. He comes to an arrangement with Henry's exchequer to make what his ransom would be, what literally a king's ransom would be.
To keep it simple, I don't mean to belittle the audience in any way here, but to keep it simple, is the torture we see in Braveheart, which is very historically inaccurate, is yes, William was literally ripped to pieces.
Was, yeah, they did do that.
That level of torture, they claim he was a nobleman in the film, but if he was a nobleman, he would not have received that monstrous of torture.
Well, it depends. I mean, the thing is, there's a lot that's not known about William Wallace. He's one of the problems. It's not even known when he was born.
Yeah, but I'm just talking the generic level that we have of him being described in that film, and someone on his level would not have been given that bad of a treatment. They would. I or anything, but I'm going.
It's true. Like, I don't know. But the thing is, but that was a couple hundred years earlier. No, but hold on, let me think. No,
but to ruin your quick mood there, but it's still.
There's so many things.
If you had some resources, you would automatically treated a lot higher.
Yeah, but the thing is that we're going to own that, but he was actually treated for a very, very serious case. But what happens is the basically the King of France is captured at Poitiers, comes over to here, arranges his ransom. The Dauphin, only the French, by the way, would call the heir to the crown after a dolphin. Only the French would have a dolphin.
Dolphin or Dauphin?
Dauphin means dolphin. It literally means dolphin, if I remember my French correctly. I could be wrong, but it's a good. But I'd rather be right. The French called the heir to the throne.
I'm with you on that one. I don't know enough about the French stuff.
I'm reasonably certain it means dolphin, but I could be wrong. I'm willing to be corrected. But basically, he has trouble. He goes back and he has trouble getting all the money. So the King of France, right? Now this is the thing. This is where chivalry's at its height. The King of France says, right, turns up in England at Henry's door, says, look, mate, I'm sorry, my useless of a son can't actually raise the money. I can't pay my ransom. So as I promised, I'll give myself back into your hands. Which probably nearly bankrupted Edward III, actually. But Philip of France dies not that long later in his accommodations in the Tower. Now, it's probably how natural that death was is potentially debatable. But as far as I'm aware, I'm not aware of any controversy at the time. about it. But that's what happens. He's literally, he said, King's Battle. So you don't want to kill people off what you. There's a story. I think again, it's from. It might actually be from Agincourt, but where you get the French turn up, and the French are turning up from all over the place. They're turning up in bits and pieces, mishmash. Excuse me. And you get some guy turns up, Prince of the Realm, very important, but his baggage train is somewhere back there. And he's eager to get in the fight, so he puts on his arm and he grabs some gear from someone else. Problem is, what this means is he's going into battle, but he's not wearing his coat of arms. He's not identifiable. So whereas he was literally worth a prince's ransom, he just gets killed because the people he's beaten don't know he's important. Whereas if he had a standard, they would have taken his surrender.
Sorry, I think you jumped there a little bit.
Did I?
You were talking King's Ransom, and now you're mentioning Prince Ransom, and those are two different things, at least in my mind.
No, you're right. So Prince. Sorry, but what I was saying was I don't know how much I missed, but basically, basically you get a guy who's a prince, a high level prince of the realm, or at least a very, very top notch aristocracy, turns up at Agincourt, Battle of Agincourt before the battle. He goes into battle without his own personal colours, if you like, without his coat of arms. He's therefore not identifiable as a valuable prisoner and he gets killed. Whereas he was literally worth, he would literally be worth what you might call a prince's ransom.
Okay, so I think I know a little bit where it goes wrong there, because you have coats of arms, which is not the same as colors, because we have flying colors and we have wearing your coats of arms. Those are two different things. They could be the same, but if you lost your coat, say that you got captured and whatnot, but you escaped, so obviously they stole all your uniform and everything, so you can't wear that fancy coat embroidered and everything, but you could still pick up a yellow banner or blue banner or whatever it was. Obviously, but Scandinavian, yellow and blue, that's the best.
There are differences. There's technical differences between between an achievement, a coat of arms, a crest. They all have different meanings.
Yeah, so crest is different, at least in my mind, between a coat of arms, you have a crest, then you have a banner, a flag, and then colors.
The banner and they did. I mean, colours tends to be a more modern thing for that, which is what we mean. For example, the military unit will have colours, but this is why, which brings us back to the controversy of Agincourt, where the battle is almost won, and Henry has taken hundreds and hundreds of French knights and noblemen prisoner. The French, now there are different accounts, but basically, understand the French, one unit has run away, one unit has fled, it comes back, I think, and they attack the baggage train. Now that's a no-no in itself. The baggage train is don't want any knights there. There may be a few men at arms, but it's not. There's kids.
It's not only that. If you take something as simple and I don't want to belittle our audience because I know we have some really intelligent people keeping us on our toes here. Is what we have in Mel Gibson's film The Patriot is very accurate of how the American defeated the British. They went completely guerrilla warfare. They started targeting the officers and everything, and that was not according to the conduct of warfare that was meant to be. You were not supposed to immediately kill the officers, the leaders, because that meant that the lower ranks, which they considered to be less than human, therefore they would just start shooting everything and destroy and do bad stuff. No, what they understood was we kill the officers. There's nobody to tell them to come and attack us. Therefore, they will run the other way, and that's that whole balance. It's warfare at different levels.
Yeah, it had definitely changed by then. But the problem is that the thing is that what you've got is you've got these people come back. They attack the baggage train, which is in itself a no-no. The baggage train is basically kids. That's you've got boys bringing up barrels of arrows and this sort of thing, but they are kids.
You still say kids as kids would mean something back then.
Well, it did to a degree. They were still children, but yeah, that definitely was. But the thing is that Henry thinks he's under attack again, and Henry thinks that the French are attacking him again, and he can't afford all the soldiers he's got guarding the knights. So he makes the decision. He tells his men at arms and his knights, cut their throats, get rid of them. They're too dangerous. The men at arms and that don't want to know. No, these guys are worth it. So he turns around to the archers, who are most archers are how shall I put this without putting my own kind down too much? Most archers are reasonably rough. They aren't professional. Well, they're professional soldiers, but not full-time soldiers, and they're quite happy to go around and slit throats for a penny for every throat they see. So that's one reason why so many people.
Archers were armed with a bow and a knife. Either you were fighting really far, or very up close personally.
Yes, Cam. The short answer is yes. That's the general story of the legend. Different things, but yes, basically, he's Richard the Lionheart's held by the King of Austria. I don't know if it's only Roman, but yeah, basically yes. But and I've distracted myself.
I'm trying to scratch my mind there because Austria doesn't really exist at that time.
Well, yes, I know, but we have to put these.
If we think regionally, that's accurate.
We have to use these things. I think basically to. I had this discussion with Alex, who know quite a lot when we're discussing what we're going to call things when we're writing, because at what point you say, okay, well, you all know something that people reading and understand, but you want to be accurate as well.
Well, I always have the forgiveness.
Oh, I don't think.
I say I'm Jim the Viking because it's accurate. I'm an explorer.
Well, Vikings now means something. Language changes. Vikings now means something. Vikings now has a specific meaning for a particular.
No, it has a cultural connaissance, I think it's called. It's okay. Yeah. I mean,
it
doesn't mean what people think it
means. It has connotations to. It means two things. Specifically, it means the act of Viking, to go with Viking, etc. But to the on a lower resolution, it means the Vikings, basically. But I know what you're saying.
Basically, if you ask anyone, if you walked on the random person on the street and you asked who's a Viking, they would say Thor.
Yeah, well, yeah, they would have these things.
But Thor is not a Viking, nor is he really a Norseman. He's an Asgardian god.
Yeah. But you say that, it's interesting. I'm not quite sure why I've got triggered on here, but we've certainly got me triggered on my areas now. And I know what it is. I haven't done a show so far this year. I'm missing talking to people about this. This is what it is. This is my missing show therapy. You're right. You say about the archers. We have archers. We're going to have knives. Everybody has a knife. Everybody has a knife, stroke dagger in the medieval period. It's even more ubiquitous than the mobile phone is today for kids. Everybody has one or a dagger. But yes, you're right. dagger, sword, buckler. You would have a shield, and a sword as well. You probably have a particular type of shortish sword. But yeah, what you get? So what you get is you have to remember that things. Yes, Geoffrey was the oldest brother. He died before Richard. Richard was the second brother, so Richard took over, and then John when Richard died, because Richard died without issue. Interestingly, next time at the pub quiz, Berengaria of Navarre, the only English queen never to set foot in England. She was Richard's wife.
It's like
right.
I said, that the chat will school us. We think we know a lot about the stuff, but the chat will always school us.
Well, no, the chat will ask interesting questions, which proves they're listening, which is good. But what I was saying was, again, things we like to, and I like telling them, I'm so glad that I do so many shows in Wales, because it's a great story for telling in Wales, especially where my next show, one of my next shows is actually going to be at Llantrisant. 1346, Battle of Crecy, the first of the really big archery battles, land battles of the 100 Years' War. First one where the British, the English are outnumbered, etc., etc., etc. Edward III in charge. His 16-year-old son, bear that in mind, folks. His 16-year-old son, Prince Edward of Carnarvon, is.
I'm going to be cheeky there, though. You say 16-year-old son. He's about to retire, isn't he?
No. Edward. I think Edward, I believe, is 16 at Crecy. I think he's born in 1330s. He was 16 at the Battle of Crecy. Yeah. In other words, he's what we these days would consider very young. He's a knight, right? He gets in trouble, and someone, I can't remember who it is, turns around to Edward III, his daddy, and says, your oldest son is in trouble. Should we help him? And the king goes, no, let him earn his spurs, because he's not been knighted yet. The king's mate, the Bishop of Durham, who I happen to know very well because he's my boss. He's my boss in my reenactment group. Reenactment group is all based on Crecy. The Bishop of Durham, who's marched down from Durham, he's been over to Wales, and he's picked up the archers, his archers, from the town of Llantrisant in Wales, and they've gone over to France, and they're archers. Most Welsh taught us archery. We picked up the bow because of the Welsh. The Welsh used it first. The English saw how good it was and decided, okay, well, we'll actually take it out and we'll make it work properly and better, which is what we normally do. He goes, and basically he puts his hand up. Basically, what he does is he tells his archers at Crecy, his archers from Llantrisant, he says, go and protect the king. Go protect the prince. The archers drop their bows, draw their swords, and go bombing in hand-to-hand combat, and they protect Edward of Carnarvon. He's not the Black Prince. He was never known as the Black Prince until much, much later. It was Edward of Carnarvon, and unfortunately passed away just before Edward did, which is why his son was Richard II. That's a different story entirely. But basically,
don't we have that similar tactic throughout history, even a lot earlier? I'm thinking Hannibal. He's known for bringing the elephant across the Italian Alps, but what I know him for is the really smart folding tactics, where he sent cheap troops, which wasn't really cheap troops, down the middle of a charging battlefield, and had them fold so both flanks could literally envelop.
Yeah, I think the Zulus did this. I think the Zulus did the same again with the horns of the buffalo. But yes, but what happens?
But they literally changed the troops' function. That was the concept.
Well, but this is what. But this is what happens. This is why. This is why. Two really, really important things for Wales happen at Crecy. The other one is that one of the French allies, is Blind King John of Bohemia. And there's a reason he's called Blind King John of Bohemia. He's the king of Bohemia, which is now what's now Germany. He's also blind, and he's led onto battlefield. He's killed at the Battle of Crécy. The Black Prince, as we shall call him, because that's how he's known, Edward sees this and is so impressed by this act of chivalry, or insanity, as most people will call it. So he reaches down, he picks up the standard of the King of Bohemia and adopts it as his own. This is in 1346. The standard of the King of Bohemia is 3 feathers, ostrich feathers, on a black background with 2 words in German. I serve. Ich dien. Now, if Darren or Wendy were in the chat, they would probably really try to correct my pronunciation to make it sound Welsh. Because ich den, that is, to this day, the standard of the Prince of Wales. To this day, nearly 650 years later. And also, because of this, this is why I love telling these stories to people. Most people by nowadays, a bit of ways often doesn't know it. But I love the old town of Lantricin. When they come back, the king, in gratitude and respect for what these archers did, grants a number of patents and rights to the free men of Lantricin. And to this day, anyone who can trace his descent from one of those archers is a free man of Lantricin. And last year, every 7 years, they have a ceremony called Beating the Bounds, which goes back to this. The Victorians did away with a lot of the rights, but that's why some of these births are that important. It has things that go on to this day.
It's fairly impressive, though.
Yeah, it is.
But it's a weird thing of history, and I always like to brag about it, Jim the Viking. It's, if you go on Wikipedia and look at Viking history, which is, again, I hate people using the word wrong, but I understand why. It's the Viking people supposedly existed between about 862 to 1066 at the furthest, so 200 years. But can you tell me how the smallest religion / culture / people / group / ethnicity that everybody on the planet today are speaking their words and praying to the gods every single day?
Well, in fact,
1,000 years later.
Well, I was trying
People
to
don't think about it because Thursday is Thor's Day.
Well, yep.
Wednesday, Woden's Day.
Tuesday is Tyr's Day.
Tuesday, yep. Friday is Frey or Freya's Day. So
4 days
you
a week. Have
gender equality there going.
Yep.
Saturday, would you like the man or the woman? Saturday
is Saturn, Sunday is Sun, and Monday is Moon. Yeah. But I was trying to work out. I'd actually, fortunately, thanks to horrible histories in my memory, it's the Viking Age in Britain started in 793 because that's when they set Lindisfarne.
Yeah, the thing is, I'm literally where I am physically right now. I'm about less than 1,000 meters from a lot of stone carvings, and they are a lot older. They're a lot older than the supposed Wikipedia entry saying that where this started.
Right, Kelly. Safe journey home, Kelly.
Yeah, you have a good one.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, there is so much of these things. It's like, I mean, it's like I fortunately I can actually say when you were saying earlier on, you were saying about knights and feudalism. So that actually comes in because of the last Viking to successfully invade England, William. He wasn't French; he was a Norman, which means he was a descendant of Rollo the Viking.
The whole Viking thing is really complicated to
Oh, it
the
is.
British culture, but I will give this, and I'm not bending too much on it. As best as I understand it, is the whole concept around the air in Britain is too pure to be it's not be breathed by a slave or something. Anyone that sets foot on English soil is a free man.
So that goes back to, that's actually much later.
It's a French Viking royal blue blood, English blue blood kind of king thingy, however that ties in. But he has French heritage. Sorry, not French, Viking heritage.
No, William has Viking heritage. That's what it's called Normandy. The whole thing about, I mean, I wasn't fully aware of this until a few years ago, but that whole quote you just gave, that quote actually comes from the House of Lords when a freed slave from the colonies was living in England, I think he was living in Bristol, or an escaped slave. Someone came to take him back to the colonies as a slave, and he appealed. His appeal went all the way up to the House of Lords, and the decision came down that the phrase was something like lines of, the air of England is too pure to admit the state of slavery, which basically meant any slave that set foot on English soil, English, was free. Now, this court case took place in 1772. This court case took place 4 years before the Americans decided to try to make tea with salt water. You know, that's how
a horrible idea, but they made their point, but it's still a horrible idea.
Well, there's so many things about that, but that's my other bugbear is when people start talking about slavery. Oh no, go away! Don't get me started. I will talk for 24 hours straight on that.
Well, I do like the whole concept around it because I'm no expert at it, but as far as I understand it, it's the southern states. We're not really going, hey, we want to keep our people in sheds and whatnot. It's like, no, they had plenty of them fighting along them.
Yeah, well,
on the battlefield.
If you look at it, even for the old so thoroughly modern, horribly blinkered point of view of the American Civil War. The vast majority of people in the Confederate States didn't keep slaves, and some of the first slave owners in America were themselves black. So there's a whole lot for that can go on, but that can go backwards. Cole Benjamin did a fantastic video on it years ago called, partly in response to a line from Frankie Boyle actually, called "The British Crusade Against Slavery." And it's still on YouTube. I'm not sure if that
I still, to this day, every now and then I get YouTube recommendation about people, mostly American, young kids. They literally come out of college and everything is going, why wasn't I taught this in the history class?
So,
your history class is not called CNN or MSNBC.
Yeah. Well, this is one of the things is that you're an interesting question. You're absolutely right, because obviously a lot of these things have a lot more impact in America than they do in England, in Britain, or in Europe in general, which is quite right because it's the Americans' history, not our history. So we had different takes on it. We weren't involved in some of it, etc., and so on and so forth. But it really, what annoys me is basically that it's just so used for one side and nobody ever, all the blame always comes from one way, never goes the other way, and all this sort of thing. Don't get me started on the Woman King.
For me, it's more the fact that even though you may be right, it may take you a very long time to convince everybody else that this is the right way of doing things. I mean, this started 1,000 years ago, 1066, if you consider where the first idea became an idea.
Well,
we still fighting against it.
We haven't had actual. You said earlier on about slaves and serfs. I'm not entirely familiar with the Viking civilization, so I'll accept your guidance on that. That you had serfs as much as slaves. That's fine. I quite accept. But we had serfdom, but we had slaves when William takes over in 1066. One of the things he does is not in the first few years, I think, he actually taxes the sale of slaves, right?
Mm.
Which
that was one of the initial part. I think Benjamin is mentioning that in his video as well.
Yeah, he did. Which I know a lot of that video, which effectively stopped it because people didn't want to pay taxes. So we have not had slavery, chattel slavery, owned people in this country for 1,000 years, nearly 1,000 years, as you said.
Mm.
We had various forms of serfdom under feudalism, where you could a free serf couldn't. A free serf was allowed to leave their land. A tied serf was basically tied to the land that they lived on.
If we put it this way, I would describe it a little bit more for people that have more the MTV pop culture understanding or only connection to it or exposure to it. It is the TV show that was Gladiator, Spartacus. Spartacus it was called. It's if you fight enough, you get yourself your freedom. But even the Spartacus show gets it quite wrong because it was not worthwhile to kill your gladiator slave.
Oddly enough, I'm going to go back. I might start watching that because there's been a lot of controversy about this new one. But yes, exactly. There's a scene in I Claudius where Livia goes down and talks to them gladiators and she wants proper fights. But as you said, thing is, slave gladiators were expensive investments. You did not want them going out and being killed on their first turn. So they weren't, a gladiator wouldn't normally be expect to be killed. But, he might be, but it wouldn't, it was the case of fight or of win or die at all. Because as you say, they were expensive resources.
Yeah. They were far more expensive than your average slave, but even your average slave is someone that was trained up, understand necessities, requirements, the whole thing. It cost a lot of resources to train them up, so they didn't want to get rid of it just because.
Yeah, exactly. We have. So the problem is it's difficult to talk about some of these things without sounding as if you mean something you don't. We have, I think, these days a very, very modernistic view of the word slavery. Not in any way.
You're very polite in saying we got an MTV understanding of what slavery is.
Well, no, but it's different. I mean, there's a scene I've not seen. I've seen. I keep meaning to try and watch Game of Thrones. I've seen so many clips from it, but there's one bit I see. I keep to come up where Daenerys goes into wherever it is, basically beats up and she frees all the slaves. And a guy comes back to her, a former slave, and asks if he could sell himself back because he had a use, he had a purpose, his skills were put to a purpose as a slave. Which as female they do. Now that's not doing it, but it's an interesting point to make you think that okay, but slavery wasn't necessarily a brutal.
Slavery was not a throwaway thing.
No, but it wasn't. When you get to the commercialized level of slavery that because we always tend, I think, our thoughts of slavery are gone with the wind and roots. In other words, the American experience in the 18th century.
Well,
and
I
19th
fully
century.
believe that certain bad things, they absolutely happened.
Oh, I'm absolutely certain
I
they did.
do not subscribe to the fact that people are describing them as that was the default. That was what's happening to everybody.
It's not it's all across all across the world. And there are worse things, like for example, another thing that Carl Benjamin mentions. There is a reason why, despite the fact that it's been going on for 1,000 years, the trade the other way out of Africa had been going on 1,000 years before the Portuguese and the British and then the English started doing it across the pond. It'd been going the other way, but there is a reason why there is no slave descendant population towards on the eastern side of Africa. The Arab slave traders made very certain that there wouldn't be any breeding. Let us put it that way and not go any further than that. Otherwise, the guys here might all start cringing. But
it might be cringe, but I know not enough about that region. All I know is the influence that where I grew up, the history I learned, and had to actually go beyond school to learn about it. Because believe it or not, I'm born and raised in Sweden. We do not get taught Swedish Viking history.
I'm not these days. I'm not surprised. I mean, it occurs.
We're talking the 80s.
Wow.
The 80s when I got to the schooling, there's no Viking history whatsoever.
Wow. It started changing. I mean, it's interesting. I think I have to remember occasionally that it's occurred to me sometimes that because I probably know more about American history than a large number of Americans. Now, that is not to say anything against those Americans. I know not because I'm American, but I know about it because I'm interested in the history. So after school, I have studied a lot. I've taken courses of, I've studied, watched lectures, etc., on the American Revolution, on American history. So I know a lot of these little bits and pieces there that the average American, but it's quite probable that the average, that an American, the other way around, an American who is interested in their history, the likes of Kelly, who's left us, who's gone now, of course, because her father, I think it was Kelly's dad, is a history professor, probably know a lot more about British history than a lot of British people who aren't interested in history. It's
that wouldn't be uncommon. I have a friend. He's a year younger than I am. He's a massive war buff. He can probably describe a lot of decisions and tactics and everything used in the American Civil War. But I doubt if I actually pushed him about, well, why and how and where did it come from, if I asked him those questions, he would not be able to tell you, but he would be able to tell you how the generals and the commanders and the lieutenants and the sergeants solved the issue they had before them.
Well,
And
yeah,
when I say
yeah,
solved, that they managed to make sure the
yeah.
other army went away.
Yeah, there's because it's military history, isn't it? It's if you're interested in military history, you're interested in the military side of it, so that's fine. You know, I wouldn't know that much. I know, as I said, I mean, I I tend to when I was at school, I did Greek and Roman history, and then I became interested in medieval history later on, which is now my main sphere of interest and knowledge. Because there's so much of it to actually talk about. There's so much you can actually do with it. There's so much history out there. My throat is beginning to go croaky. I've got a bit of catarrh at the moment, and we've been going for 2 hours.
Yeah, we kept this one up quite good. It didn't go really exactly where I thought it was going to go, but it's always interesting to be able to discuss these aspects that I think should be discussed more.
Well, it's also very interesting is when you've got an audience, a chat which engages and asks you things and gives you and picks up on something. It can send you to some. It can say some really, it can do some really interesting discussions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but
Well,
they've always kept us honest, and I've found myself having to have gone back through a lot of stuff that I've read and thought I knew about, and I'm fortunate enough to be, well, Jim the Viking, so I'm kind of lonesome in my field of trying to figure out what the heck did we really get up to, rather than this is just what everybody else is saying.
What's amazing, you think? I mean, you look at where you guys got. There's a reason that Russia's called Russia. It's from Rus, from the red hair of the Vikings that sailed down there. You've got the I can't remember. I think it was the Emperor Roman Emperor in Constantinople. I think had the Varangian Guard, who were Vikings or Norsemen. So you guys got, and quite probably, of course, a bit late.
You woke up a bit late.
As we're tying up, I see.
That's how you're supposed to do it. Okay, I will remember that to next time. I'm going to wake up an hour late.
I was going to say it's that time dilation between here and Scotland, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So they've always been weird up there.
Well, yeah, this is true. The Scottish one is great, but there's a reason we built a wall to keep them out. But yeah, you guys. I mean, you guys, you did get around. As I said, and I'm sorry, but William was a Viking, not a French. He didn't speak French; he spoke Norman French. He was a Norman. And we can get actually into so many different interesting areas for history that started off.
Well, it's still. I believe it's the part of the whole thing that Carl Benjamin was talking about in his video about the British Crusade against slavery, is the fact he's missing out on the whole thing. Where did the idea come from? Because the Vikings never technically really kept slaves. Yes, prisoners of war, serfs, but as a serf, you had the right to your land. You had more than what slaves are described to as in modern standards. Then you're starting to get the whole thing of this air is too pure to breathe.
Wait, you You mean all that stuff that I saw with Kirk Douglas and Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh was wrong? I thought
Actually,
I thought the Vikings was a documentary. I know. In fact,
if you want to go down the documentary route, you do know that that there are multiple fan accounts around Stargate. They are saying now that they're trying to push it and promote it as much as they can without actually really annoying people. That Stargate is actually a documentary and not a TV show.
What was it? They did it at some point. Did it that someone? I think they made it on the show or something. When they didn't know doing that when they had one of the episodes of talk about the TV show, a TV show on the TV show. They said, what an idea!
Oh yeah, they did that. The 200th episode of Stargate.
200 episode was fantastic episode, but the idea that if you make a story, anything that actually gets out about it, everybody will think about the TV show, not the real thing.
This is a brilliant way of hiding it. And let's face it, I've never been to Cheyenne Mountain. I've not been to Area 51. I have no clue what's going on there. I've heard rumors. I have heard a lot of explanations. I've seen a lot of TV shows. But I don't know. So could it be true? Possibly.
Wow. It's yes.
Yeah, PJ is just mentioning. I think the episode was called Wormhole Extreme.
Wormhole Extreme was the TV. Yeah, it was called Wormhole Extreme was a TV show that they. I think Wormhole Extreme. They made a TV show. Was the first time I made a TV show, which was about 3 episodes, if I remember right. Wormhole Extreme was a few years earlier with Marty, the same character, was a script writer. And then 200, he came back, and that's when you had the fantastic piss takes, like the puppet episode where they go through the Stargate and they're puppet and their strings get cut, or you get this. I thought my favourite one for that was, especially given the complaints about episodes 9 and 10, with Ben Browder and Claudia Black coming in.
I love them because I love them from Farscape.
Yeah, but they do want this where Valor is he's pushing ideas, and he goes, well, that's Star Trek, that's Wizard of Oz.
Oh,
and then,
she's been watching TV shows.
Yeah, but then she. But the good bit is she then does one that is basically Farscape with Ben Browder as the character with a face mask. The guy, and he turns around and says, "No, you've got me on that one. Never heard of it." Which is obviously such an in joke. But the in joke's on.
Yeah, it's an exact description of him.
Yeah, but the in jokes in that episode were really, really good. Yeah. And she said, Pete, you said the DeLuise brothers. Yeah. Oh,
yeah. But that's how you you breathe life into something. I talked about this during the Let's Talk Geeky. It's just that simple thing of the stormtroopers being called in, thinking it's an emergency exercise or something like that. And it's just an exercise. It's not something real. So therefore they immediately just go, yeah, whatever, we're not going to pay attention that much. But it brings life into the universe around the story, which Stargate does really well there. It's not only do they take the main characters, aside from actually taking the puppets. I have no idea how they would have been able to do that, but they take the main characters from Farscape, transplant it into Stargate SG-1, and then make fun of that within that universe as it's part of the reality around.
I think a lot of people, because I know there was a lot of people were saying that because you've got Ben Browder come over, and then you also got Claudia Black had a recurring role, and then 2/3, 40% of the main team Well, it was going to be called Stargate Farscape or whatever. Because they'd come from one very well-known or within genre sci-fi show to another, which were that many had a lot of similarities. So I think that maybe in part they were saying, yeah, okay, we get the point, we understand what you're saying, but we understand that there's this connection, so we'll take the piss out of it ourselves. But that was,
Yeah,
it really was an absolutely excellent one. But
part of me, when I was that young, though, I was thinking, are they trying to preemptive some kind of mockery or backlash? But now that I've rewatched it a few times, I think no, they meant to go down that route.
Yeah. Well, something hadn't actually occurred to me until someone mentioned it a while ago. Of course, that actually one big problem is Stargate is a great idea. I'm genuinely tempted to wonder if the guys that came up with the Stargate or the SG-122s have ever played or at all familiar with the universe of the role-playing game Traveller. Because the Traveller role-playing game has the galaxy set in the future. Basically, it has a lot of human civilizations which were transplanted by an ancient civilization 300 years ago. Whereas
I think they must have. Now that you mention it, I think I'm not 100% familiar with it. I know sort of the gist of Traveller, but they now that you say it, they must.
I mean, it's a very similar idea. But then again, I don't know, is it just a similar idea? There may be others probably time for you, but I hadn't actually realised it, despite watching all of Stargate many times, that actually a lot of the civilizations they come across can't have been stolen by the Goa'uld because they came about after the Stargate was buried. The Stargate's buried when they defeat Ra, right? And the Stargate is buried in ancient Egypt, which is great in the film, because in the film, for someone, probably because they got a Goa'uld with them, they haven't advanced 2,000 years.
Technically, the gate is not in Egypt. It's been taken over to the States. Because it's been about 60 years.
No. What I'm saying is, what you get is all these civilizations out in the galaxy. So you've got the Asgard, not the Asgard. What are they? The ones that worship the Asgard. I can't remember what they're called offhand.
No. The Asgard, but you do have the people of Thor. Thor's hammer is the episode called.
Thor's hammer, except those ones and others. And you've got medieval. You've got a lot of them. But the problem is, if the idea is that the Goa'uld kidnapped them from Earth, but the Goa'uld haven't been back to Earth since the Stargate, since Ra was kicked off. So how there haven't been a Stargate there for them to come back and pick up the Vikings, Mongols, etc., which is
it shows a little bit. I think this is what a lot of people miss. It misses the big logistical issues.
Yeah.
So you have the Asgards that are technically in a different galaxy as opposed to the Milky Way galaxy, where they're having their own problems and everything. Everything from diminishing genome returns and everything because they're clones, and they're also fighting the replicators. And they're having tons of other issues, and then they're having to try and reinforce or at least police a little bit of previous agreements and contract areas. So the first planet that the SG-1 team comes across is the one where it's literally just Thor's hammer standing there right in front of the gate. And if you're too old, you get zapped.
Yeah. But the thing is, I was saying with these, there's this problem with technically, by their own laws, there shouldn't be any civilizations out there that are based that was taken from Earth after the ancient Egyptians. But who cares? It's a plot hole, but who cares? It's Stargate. I really don't care. It never occurred to me until someone pointed out a decade after the series had finished.
But the thing is, they needed to fill it out. We wanted to see the different cultures.
Yeah.
And that was a big attraction to it. We wanted to see the Mongolians. We wanted to see the ancient Aztecs. We want to see the
Yeah.
Mayan. I have no idea who the Nox are supposed to be founded on, but I would say maybe
Well,
Wiccan.
no, I don't think the Nox were human. The Nox were one of the four big races. The Nox were one of the four.
Yes, but the people they take care of.
Oh, so you mean the humans in the Nox? Yeah. I don't know. It's a good question.
But then again, you do have a slight nod to the Norse. Not technically the it's not Jormungandr, but it's kind of frost people because they're pale. They live in caves, that kind of thing. It's really tricky, but I do liked. Well, I liked watching it because instead of having the Wikipedia or everything that you can quickly pull up these days, when this TV show came out, it's like, oh, is that people? And trying to figure out, are they meaning that culture or this one? Where are they trying to put the reference? Whereas today, you just know everybody's just going to try to get offended. It's one of the first, I think it's third or fourth episode in the first season of Star Trek One. It's where it's an Asian culture, probably Mongolian-ish,
Yeah.
and Carter has to dress up in woman suits and everything. And we already know she's a big badass, kick-ass, no-nonsense attitude woman, smart as hell, all of that. And it's kind of funny that she has to try and play along. But in the end, she's kicking Gary. I always keep getting his last name, but he's like a massive Chinese actor, Gary something. Noku.
Oh, I know what you mean. He got double barreled with Kate Tonog or something like that. I think I know what you
Yeah,
mean.
he's got this perfect stern face and everything. You believe that you would never believe him to be like a background minion. He's definitely head honcho of whatever you put him in.
Yeah. I think he was he a security officer in an episode of either Babylon 5 or Crusade, or I think or someone else.
He's been in Babylon 5, definitely. He's been in DS9 too, I think. He's been, the film is coming out quite soon. And I can't believe Carl Urban signed up for it, but Mortal Kombat is coming out with a new film in October. But in the 1995 Mortal Kombat, which is cheesy as hell, but still funny, still enjoyable, he's the bad. Main bad guy, but he's the bad guy.
Was that was that the one that what's her name? Little Aussie singer Kylie Minogue was in?
No, Kylie Minogue was in Street Fighter.
Oh, I've never. Oh, I might have played those games a bit, but
I will follow you this one. Even though I know the difference between the universes, I will still say same.
Yeah. The thing is, Carl Urban.
Yes.
Come back and
Judge
play
Dredd
Judge
himself.
Dredd. Yes, come back and play Judge Dredd. First thing you do, right? You lock Taika Waititi up in an ISO cube for millennia, right? Lock him up in an ISO cube so he doesn't get to touch Dredd.
Yeah.
Right? Then you come out with the next Dredd movie for TV series or 2000 AD universe series.
You see, just off the top of my head, I'm spitballing right here. I'd make a Judge Dredd film, and I'm hoping PJ is in the audience so he can hear this.
He is.
I'd bring back Sylvester Stallone, but he would be one of the judges in the council. And he would not, and I would literally insist, he would not be a mentor, guardian, or anything to the actual character of Judge Dredd. I would bring back Carl Urban as Judge Dredd. Alternatively, I would bring back Henry Cavill, or put Henry Cavill in that role. But I would still insist the helmet does not come off.
Yeah.
And he would be that brutal, just straightforward. If I have to come out here and fix stuff, you have broken the law, I'm the law, I decide what's going on.
The law.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
I
I
am
mean,
the law.
this is what a lot of people said, and I agree with it. I mean, I think that the Stallone movie was a very good comic 2000 AD Mega City 1 movie.
Very
It
light-hearted.
just wasn't a dread movie.
Well,
The Carl Urban version was a really good dread movie. It just didn't do Mega City 1 that well.
it didn't do Mega City 1 that
Mega City
well,
1 didn't look anything, didn't look
but
futuristic.
he kept the strictness. But I lacked
Oh,
dread
cool
because
idea,
everything
PJ.
was Anderson. And Anderson is a massive character on her own
Yeah.
in the Dread universe,
Yeah.
but still, it was too much Anderson to be called a Dread film.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like that's an excellent idea, PJ. Stone as Judge Fargo. You need to know a little, a bit more of the law, but yeah, I think the same things. I mean, I'm currently in two minds about both. Oddly enough, about both Superman and Fantastic Four.
Have you seen either of them yet?
I haven't, but for the first time since Endgame, I may well see them when they become available, because someone I honestly can't remember who it was and what they were talking about, but it wasn't about those movies. But I was watching someone over the weekend and they said something about something similar. And I compared it to a Rorschach test, and I thought, do you know what? I think that could apply to both, because I've seen people from generally on the same side of things. Generally have the same sphere of view of these things. I say both good things and bad things about both movies. That despite all, there's a lot of people that despite all the advertising that we got, that the Fantastic Four was not, apparently it's been refilmed, but it's not anywhere near as bad as people expected it to be. And again, people have said the Superman movie, apparently this is Superman art, but other bits of it are really good. So I think I might actually watch both of them when they come out, because they seem to be they seem to be the sort of film which people who've been fed up with the slop we've been getting recently, some people see the slop and other people see positive bits in them.
I will say that when it comes to the Superman film that I just saw in the cinema with David Corenswet, James Gunn, Superman, James Gunn, as Critical Drinker called it.
Yeah.
It is, at moments, you are being brought back into this is Superman. This is that thing. But a lot of it breaks because it's a crazily weird story, and the whole thing about him just coming to planet Earth and banging chicks to make as many babies as possible
I agree.
really leaves such a bad taste.
Yeah, well, PJ's good. I mean, the thing is, there's something that, again, this is purely from what I've heard of it, and my people told me the stories and the rest of it. But it's people who've seen the film. What they said is it's what they've told me of the story as much as impressions. I think the reason I talk about it when we're talking about Dread is they've all got one thing in common. From what I've judged Dread and from what I've heard of Superman and to a degree the Fantastic Four, all come across. Well, Superman and Fantastic Four come across, from what I've heard, as second movies. Right? The fact that you
Superman is definitely something you're getting thrown into something that already exists without explanation.
It's not that, but you've not seen him win. You've not seen him rise. You've not seen the Fantastic Four. You don't have to make a whole film about it, but And I understand that they do it quite well in the Fantastic Four. The way they do the exposition of how they got there. But it would be nice to see some of these things. Dread. I mean, the other thing I think that especially that Dread and Superman and Dread, I think, too many characters. You're right, Dread. Because the urban version is so different from the Sylvester Stallone version and so far apart, you can't really compare one of you. You have to treat them as different things. So if you've got people coming in, what you really want is you want people to concentrate on Judge Dredd. So you have Judge Dredd in there. Dredd is the main character. If you want, because these days, to a degree, you do. Yeah, let's be honest. We want female. You want a female lead in most things. A female lead is not a bad thing. It's not going to be a romance female lead in Dredd, but you can have it, but not such a major part. So you have Dredd come in, and Anderson is in there as a secondary character, an important but a secondary character, and then introduced to the side. So it's mainly a Dredd movie, but
I wouldn't have minded as much if the Carl Urban Dredd film had been Anderson Chronicles, or maybe been Anderson Judge Dredd Universe, or something like that.
Yeah, well, but you could do that. I mean, the thing is, what you could do is you could do that. We're comic fans, we're sci-fi fans, we know these things. You could do that. So what you could do, I would be quite happy for, because I actually quite. I mean, Judge Anderson was probably my favourite secondary character in Dredd. I liked my appearances. But so what you do is you do that. You start off with a Dredd movie, and you have a Dredd movie, and Anderson is in the movie as a secondary character. He's in bomb. What? Or maybe he discovers her or something, so she brings in. The second movie is basically the Carl Urban movie that we get. So you've got the second movie is Dredd. He's training her. He's training Anderson, and we get all that stuff. Great movie, right? Then you split out, and you say, okay, so we can then we've now got an established character. We can have another Dredd movie, and we can have a Hershey movie, or Dredd and Hershey can go on to be their own things. The same thing strikes me from what I've heard of it of the Superman movie. It's a new start. So yeah, there been. Most people probably know Superman story. You don't need to do a massive, great hour-long first act of Superman's arrival. But it should be a Superman movie.
And I think Gunn managed to do it okay-ish. But the fact is that we're not introduced to Superman. We're introduced to this thing that they say is Superman. And I know that PG's, I know you're listening, but I know you're not ever going to go and see it. But in this one, Superman is more portrayed as, I have no clue what's going on. I'm just trying to do things right. And it sort of works if they actually had him facing certain challenges or something. It's like, okay, so that's how I'm supposed to do it. But instead it is more him being shown that, hey, I got no clue what's going on. And then you have him living in a multi-trillion-dollar flat that not even Elon Musk could afford, with an amazing view of Metropolis, where you see him having a chat with his already well-established girlfriend, Lois. They already know each other's secrets and everything, and they've established a secret identity, not reveal it to the world and blah, blah, blah. Not even the fact that they're dating, but in the background that you see out of the balcony, a few kilometers in the distance, that's where the super gang, Nathan Fillion's Green Lantern and all the others, They're fighting. Oh, it's just a minor multi-dimensional demon that's decided to
Yeah.
invade the city. I don't need to go out and rescue them. We can continue chatting.
Mm.
And it goes on for, I think, 3 minutes.
I mean, you can.
3 minutes you sit and see Lois and Clark, or Lois and Superman, because I think it's more a discussion to Superman than
Yeah.
Clark. And they're having that discussion wherein you as the audience in the background see just an LED neon light show in the background of them fighting a multi-dimensional demon, and Superman's just going, "Yeah, don't worry about it. It's just a minor multi-dimensional demon."
Yeah, but the thing is, that's the sort of thing. I mean, it strikes me as um, th- that a lot of people said that it's James Gunn's Superman by James Gunn is actually should be better be called the Justice Gang guest starring Superman, because it's a spin-off movie. It's it it's already intended to be a spin-off for Lanterns, because the Lanterns TV show is already well under production, and before the film comes out, people
It
know that
wouldn't surprise me if it is, but
um
I,
so
I
but
did not like that this kind of Superman thinking they have this, because it's, to put it as in as few words as possible, it is beat shit until it gives up.
yeah, I mean
And I can understand that from, say, like an American military style. It's we are the soldiers. Yes, we're fantastic. We're valorous and we're all that. But our main job is literally we go to place A, and there's an X on the map. We're gonna deliver explosive stuff to that point. That's it. It is that simplistic. And it doesn't carry in any fact that it's supposed to be other things that they do at the same time, like carrying
yeah,
goodwill or building infrastructure or support or stuff that they actually do on the side that never really get told about.
yeah.
And
Well,
this is what this Superman is literally jumping over. Is like, go there, beat the crap out of this.
again, I mean, again, this from what I can hear, I say it sounds as if um, this would be this movie sounds as the story sounds very much as if it should be the second movie. If you want, it shouldn't have been the first Superman movie. It should either have been a second Superman movie, or given that most people watching it, most normies, most of the audience, are almost certainly going to know who Superman is, do it as Superman and the Justice Gang, or whatever. Admit that that's what it is, that it's an ensemble movie.
Yeah, but
So,
no,
to
it's the
print it as
fact
that rather than,
Superman is not Superman,
yeah,
really. This is a
well, yeah, this
completely
is
new
why this, yeah.
Superman we're getting introduced into.
I mean, I know this is
We're
what Ian.
getting jumped into the
Yeah.
third film.
Yeah. Well, this is what I know. This is what Ian's been saying a lot. What David Ian's been saying, that it's not that it's that they're dummy, that it's another film where the hero is not heroic, that the hero doesn't win, etc., etc. So yeah, exactly. I mean, apart from the fact that, I mean, it goes without saying that if you're going to do a Superman movie, it should be about Superman. Thing is, if you're going to do that, yeah, hero's journey. It's why if you can have a 3-act hero's journey in any movie, the second act is probably going to be the hero's beaten, having to come back, overcome adversity, realise they're not as powerful as they thought, and then the third movie
You
they
don't
come back.
always need
But
to do the hero's journey,
yeah,
though.
no,
There are
what I'm saying is,
plenty of really great examples, and one of my favorites, and no PJ is gonna hate this, but one of my favorites is you don't really need to know how bad he is Rorschach in The Watchmen,
Hmm?
because he doesn't really wake up as a character until he's getting thrown in prison and he's
Yeah,
shouting the whole thing. I'm not locked in here with you. You are locked in here with me.
yeah. But what
then
I
you
mean,
go, okay, he's not just bad, he's very bad.
what I mean is it sounds as if that's fine if you don't, but if you're doing that, you don't start that story in the middle of the second act. How is Superman being defeated? You know, you don't start it with him being whacked. Okay, what you do is, yeah, you have a first film, and at the end, and if you want to do it that way, at the end of the first, you do it. Star Wars: Empire Strikes Back. At the end of the Empire Strikes Back, right? What they're defeated, they're down. You know, they've lost. You don't start Star Wars with that. You don't, you know, it's like sort of starting. It's like starting Star Wars with halfway through the Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi, rather than A New Hope. You know, if you can,
but you could never have done that, because there's
no,
no way that the best film of Empire Strikes Back could ever have happened without
oh
Star Wars
yeah, I mean,
being
I'm
already there.
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't make any sense at all. I'm just using it as an example of the idea that, you know, you've got the middle movie of a trilogy. They're down, they lose a lot, and then they come back. But you don't, you know, if you're going to start it with a 30 years ago, you need, I think, you need to have seen that somewhere. You know, you need to have said, you don't need to have a whole movie with Superman coming to Earth, etc. You can start with him coming to Earth, growing up, and then you can start with him coming to yeah, right. Exactly. Oh, but then again, don't worry, because it falls down and his lightsaber gets captured by some weird thing from Disney atrocities, doesn't it? But no, what I'm saying is you would do, but you know, you could do that. You don't have to have Superman coming to. You can you can, if you want, show boom, a pre-title sequence, even almost comes to Earth, boom. 30 years later, he's grounded in front of, and he moves to Metropolis. The way the Donner cut didn't it? The first one, if I remember right, basically started with him moving to New York, moving to Metropolis. You do that, and he starts coming up and out.
There's
And
so
then he's
many
defeated.
nuances and subtleties that are within that, and I think
Hmm.
that it's circulating at the moment on the Twitter. It's the
And yes, PJ, you're right.
when Clark, I believe the scene is actually after the whole Niagara Falls and rescue and everything, but where they're in the hotel room, him and Lois, and he's trying to get ready to explain that, hey, I am Superman, but he suddenly decides to not really tell that. But he takes his glasses off. But you see the subtleness in
Hmm.
the posture of Christopher Reeves. He's raising himself. He takes his glasses off, but at the same time, very subtly, you have to pay attention. But he's raising himself up. He's stretching up. His shoulder goes back. He's not looking down. He's actually looking straight forward. A lot of very subtle details. But you see, that is Superman standing there. That's no longer Clark Kent.
Yeah.
But it is Superman holding Clark Kent's glasses.
Hmm. But yeah, but I said, I mean, it sounds as if, I mean, I from what I've heard, which is why I think I'm probably going to watch them, it sounds as if they've done that better. They've done the recap better in Fantastic Four. Although, how much better, as I said, it's quite interesting to watch these things and to actually see people coming up with different viewpoints. People who, you know, you see them things, and you would normally expect to understand, and some people see something in it, and others see something else. There's a thing. I'm also wondering if for both of these movies, the thing I've noticed over the years, it's a phenomenon where if you take the film or TV series from an IP, change the names so it's not connected to Superman, to the Fantastic, or to whatever. So that it's on its own, so it's not coming with any baggage to the characters. That then may be a much better product. I mean, I noticed this one thing I noticed was Lord help me, I think I suffered through 2, if not 3 episodes of the abomination that was The Watch, the last Terry Pratchett atrocity.
I understand where we want to go with that, but I think it's TikTok generation, which is definitely what this Superman film was made for. It's 20-second clips or whatever TikTok is, because I sadly don't know, because I really can't stand the TikTok format. It's too fast, it's too quick, and more often than not, it's just junk, the stuff that I see on YouTube. So I've never got into it, but this film is definitely that whole thing. These are 20-second bites. So therefore, all of the 20-second bites that we're putting together into a massive film, we're going to call it Superman, but it's not really going to be much Superman. It's going to be tons of other things. And I kid you not, I think the giant toad kaiju lizard, so Gojira, the Gojira lizard, so Godzilla, gets more screen time than Superman does in the entire film.
Cool. Well, in fact, I was thinking that there's some of these things that, I mean, obviously for something like Superman, it would take more than just taking out the changing the names. You have to make changes. You'd have to make changes so it obviously wasn't Superman. Because it first actually occurred to me with I tried to watch Apple's Foundation series. The first one was quite good.
I started watching that one literally just 2 days ago.
I think it's got. I know because I know Rabbi was really enthusiastic about it as well. I think it's the first one. I think it's got some. It's got some whole characterization in it, but I think it's got some really, really great ideas that weren't in the books. It's the sort of thing where I think 2/3 of it could possibly be a good sci-fi series if it wasn't for the fact that I know the Foundation books. Starship Troopers is a very good action sci-fi series. I like the film.
When you say series, because the Starship Troopers is only one diary, not technically a book. It's a diary.
Well, yeah.
Of Johnny Rico.
Yeah.
But
what I'm saying,
then you have the TV show from Paul Verhoeven, which then got spin-offs thanks to...
Oh my God, we've been invaded. We've been bombed. We've been dive bombed.
Oh no, the British are here. Run away.
Like somebody's talking from the bottom of the water by the sound of it. Yeah, it's... yeah, I mean, the thing is, I saw those ones, but I agree. But I happen to like Starship Troopers has been my favourite, probably my favourite book of all time. Highly great stuff. But it's things like that. I mean, back when me and PJ were doing a show that I won't mention because I don't want to drive PJ around the bend. And indeed, similar thing to Game of Thrones is a similar thing. They could well be, with certain caveats of certain political viewpoints which may invade them, could be good shows if they weren't connected to the IP they're connected to, because the shows are so different and they're trying to tell a different thing to what the original was. So I think that seems to be the thing that people come out and they think, okay, well, I've got some ideas, but some of these things might actually be okay if you don't
I've
know
always liked the ones where they go, this is inspired by
Hmm.
this story or this universe. It's like, okay, now I know you got that idea, so I kind of have a loose idea of these are the magic rules. This is the setting. I'm expecting something to take place in, say, rural America, not New York City,
yeah,
for example. And this, these are people that may exist, but you created something new so that the people that existed in the original part, they may be lore or history, or they may still be around.
yeah,
I still haven't seen the Ghostbusters where they actually brought back the old
I have.
guys and they did the young kids and try to do something. But I like the concept. But then again, I've kind of stayed away from all the new Ghostbuster stuff because I don't want it to be ruined. Because the first one and the second one are just so fantastic
Yeah, I
as
agree.
they are.
I mean, there were ways to do it. There were ways to do such and such the next generation. And the ways, you got something you want to carry on. Great. A lot of things that were popular, a new version of them. When you younger cat, of course, why not? But you do it as with anything else. The way to do it, anything like that, with any spin off, is you do a you do a you get the original and then you get a semi-pilot. TV shows do it a lot easy. TV shows do it all the time. It's
They
easy
do
to
have
do
a
with
few
TV
more
show.
minutes to spin stuff up.
Yeah,
I just realized I don't have the admin stuff anymore, but I was trying to highlight PJ Maybe's latest comment there, the Wheel of
yeah,
Crime,
yeah,
because God, did
yeah.
they really do that one dirty?
Apparently, it's been cancelled. It's still. I was amazed it was still going.
I think it got a fourth season or something, and I have no idea how. I think that the
I have
people that
no idea.
watched first season were the people that actually read the book, and everybody abandoned it after season episode 2.
I have no idea how Rings of Diversity got a first season, never mind a third, second or third.
They were first season. There's no matter why, because it is female empowerment. So women are strong, women are
Mm,
capable, women can do tons of things. They're the only ones in control of magic. Just happened to be a story about, yes, the Dragon Reborn happens to be a boy that kind of brings unbalance to the power in the universe and everything, and everybody will die horribly. And, well, at least that's how the myth goes, but it's not exactly how, what is it, Arthur. Uh, I've literally scrubbed it so much from my brain that I forgot tons of the characters, but Randall Thor is supposed to be Arthur uh,
oh
not
right,
Kingslayer, but he's supposed to be like that Dragon Reborn.
right, yeah, got you.
Bring back and defeat Shaitan, which is supposed to be the big devil evil. But everything they did in the first season is uh, absolute reverse. The girls have all the power. They remove my favorite character, which is Perrin, which is a blacksmith boy, big and clumsy, but therefore he's much timid and careful. So he doesn't try to take up space, despite the fact that he's built like a brick shit house.
Yeah,
So he's very humble, but he's becoming part of a wolf spirit pack thing. He can talk to wolves and everything. And Matt, which is in the TV show, is being portrayed as a loser, thief, not scoundrel. Scoundrel is positive in this sense. It's just a
mm,
thief and loser in this TV show, whereas in the books he's responsible. He takes care of his family, his sisters. He doesn't have the greatest of luck, and the book literally starts off with him having crashing out of bad luck, picking up a dagger from Chagos. I'm trying to remember. It's a very bad city where, like,
Yeah.
it was so bad that if you touch anything in the city, you will literally be contaminated by an evil spirit and you'll die. So he that's literally his first experience in the world. But after that, he comes into his own and he's becoming quite lucky. He's becoming much more emphasized that he's a really good character. He cares about his families and people around him and all that. But they just completely buried it in the TV show.
Well, I mean, there is definitely, I think,
Lewis Therin. So I should have watched Chad sooner, PJ. But
yeah.
yeah, the Lewis
But
Therin.
there's a thing in that. I mean, as I said, I mean, I've not read the book, so I was taking up with some different actors. But so a lot of the, I didn't know what was wrong, but it seemed to be a lot of crap storytelling. But there is definitely a thing, which is still ongoing. I think that Ian's mentioned a number of times. Is they do seem to they can't let you have a good character that's white or male. I mean, I've got no problem with
It's not just that. In this TV show of The Wheel of Crime, all the ladies are super flat.
Yeah.
I'd actually argue the fact that the ladies in the first episode are already super strong, and by the end of the season, they're weaker because they have had no development. Whereas in the book, they go Nynaeve Almera, which is the village wisdom, which is the, shall we say, healing lady of it. She's caring. She's worrying about everybody and everything, and she feels the weight of the world on her shoulder. And she discovers that suddenly she's a lot more than this, but she's fighting her own nature against the mage that comes in. Her name just escapes me now. But the mage that comes in literally just whisks all these kids out of this village and say, hey, we have to go to this Tarvalon city for training and everything. And during that journey, she's fighting every single step of the way that I'm not this, I refuse the one source, I refuse the power. But slowly she comes to grips that she's super powerful. And she is already having that, but she doesn't understand it. And then you have her younger friend who she just jumps at the opportunity, but she doesn't know anything about magic, power, or anything, but she discovers as she goes along.
Well, I think weren't they actually also a lot younger in the books?
Yes. So by the time they're kind of whisked away, they're supposed to be around 15 and 16. But in the TV show, let's just say there are some very graphical optional clothing scenes from the get-go from these mid-early teenagers.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with strong characters. There's nothing wrong. I think there's
nothing wrong with strong character, but I want a strong character to be built into a stronger character.
As they say, there's a thing about the trope where the hero's journey is, she was all powerful all along, and just everyone else has to realise how powerful she was. I think there were two problems with the way they handle strong female characters in books these days. The character has to make sense in the world setting, so you can't you don't want you can't have a 90-pound soaking wet 5'2", 21-year-old beating up half a dozen hardened soldiers, unless there's a reason she can do that, so she's super or something. You know, there has to be a reason for that, and there's nothing wrong with. And unfortunately, the only way they seem to be able to actually, they don't understand it's not a zero sum. The only way they seem to be able to build up a female character is by pushing down other characters, rather than
pushing
bringing
down
them
other
back up.
characters,
Yeah.
but also they just go and it's like, no, but this 110-pound soaking wet 4-foot midget has no issue fighting this mountain from Game of Thrones. If we put him
Yeah.
into place, this Icelandic dude is like 6'7" tall. He weighs like 280 pounds in real life.
Yeah, I mean, it's that.
There's no way this tiny little character would even be able to make a dent. He would probably not even notice if you tried to punch him.
I mean, Game of Thrones did the nicest, didn't it? I think the first place where Arya first attacks the Hound, and he just whacks her, and he whacks her.
Yeah.
You know, and then she learns to use.
She spends
skill.
several seasons with the faceless. To actually learn how to become
she learns
invisible,
and she
stealthy,
learns,
be able to really do what she needs to do.
Yeah, and she still does it. She still doesn't do it when she comes back and kills everybody off in revenge for the Red Wedding. She doesn't go round toe to toe and slaughter them all. She tricks them. She serves poisoned food. She disguises herself as the First Doctor. Sorry, no, I mean, I forgot the actor's name.
But she's using
David Bradley. Yeah, but exactly. But she doesn't. You know, and there's another one where she recovers her sword. She doesn't go beat the. She gets him when he's on the deck. He's been knocked down, and she just holds his on, just pushes them. You know, she doesn't act like a super warrior gold boss. She acts like a young woman who knows her things. She doesn't put people down. She uses what she's got. Right, you know, she's not a girl boss. She uses, from what bits I've seen, she uses the skills she's learned. She doesn't do anything that you think, oh, come on, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way she could punch on that or anything. I don't know if there's anybody left to chat apart from PJ at the moment, actually.
Yeah, no, I say, yeah. PJ's been adding in the names that I kept forgetting when it came to the Wheel of Time, Shadow Logos. It's the city that fell to just greed and corruption and like self-hatred and loathing. But it's such a fantastic lore that is within this book, and it's literally one of the first things you're introduced to, but they just brush it over. And I think in the TV show, all they wake up with is that they're spewing out some slugs when they wake up in the morning, and that's kind of it. I know they're trying to show the shadow of Logos.
That seems to be the thing so much these days, doesn't it? That why, you know,
why build up the proper horror when you can just like MTV or TikTok the stuff? Which I really like a Christopher Lee film that I can guarantee literally no English-speaking person ever come across, and it's called Mio My Mio. And it is a book by Astrid Lindgren. And if anyone knows that name, Astrid Lindgren is the lady that wrote Pippi Longstocking.
I was going to say that. I thought the name sounded familiar.
Yes. But Mio My Mio, the film, the evil bad guy, is played by none other than Christopher Lee.
Okay.
Christopher Lee, in this Swedish-speaking film, is just speaking English.
Any Christopher Lee is a good movie as long as it's got boobs in diaphanous nighties. I.e., if it's a
Yeah,
Hammer movie.
fair enough on that part, but this is supposed to be a children's film. But it's a children's film with, I kid you not, if I was an adult looking at it and thinking, how scary are the elements that they're talking about, like death and consequences and evil and good and all that, I would still say it's 18 plus despite no boobies. It is that well done. But it's a film from, I think, 1991, and it's called Mio, My Mio. And it's a fantastic fantasy film. Did I lose you on audio or something, or have you gone away?
No. Sorry, I was just typing in a reply to Chris. I am not.
I would say Astrid Lindgren may be known for Pippi Longstockings, which people think is, yes, cute red-headed girl living on her own. She's a pirate daughter. She has her monkey. She has her horse and all that fun stuff. Pippi Longstocking is quite cheery. But Astrid Lindgren wrote another book, The Brothers Lionheart, which I think you will like to reference to as in terms of a name. And it's essentially a book that starts with two brothers dying in a fire in the city of Stockholm.
Oh, nice.
And then they go to the land of Nangiala, which is a name I think you might have heard.
Not sure. Doesn't sound familiar.
Nangiala is essentially heaven.
Oh, right.
It turns out that heaven comes with its own tyranny. And the tyranny even comes with a dragon called Katla. And Katla, all hail Katla. If you've ever heard that or ever seen that, that means very bad fire-breathing dragon.
PJ
even went to Iceland to film the fire-breathing dragon.
Oh, wow. PJ, I would never diss Christopher Lee. He might show me what it sounds like when someone's stabbed. I don't care if he's been dead for years. I will not disrespect a man who is in the SOE and who is one of the sources for James Bond.
I actually know what it sounds like to be stabbed. Like,
oh,
okay. Don't need to know more.
Yeah, PJ, you're right, exactly. Yeah, I agree with you, mate. That's what I said. Is with TV, we complain about them telling rather than showing. But yeah, you're right. If you want a background, exactly. The way to do that is you talk and explain. You need to explain what's happening. So yeah, flashes rather than a whole hour of flashbacks or something. I think we probably should think about starting to wrap up, mate, because considering we had no idea what we're going to come in here, we could be going for nearly 3 hours. So
we've gone through history,
talked
about different cultures and classes and roles throughout history. We talked quite a lot about various films. We even touched on the new stuff that's kind of junk.
Yeah.
I would say the best stuff I've seen so far this year is Superman, James Gunn's Superman, but that's not like a really high bar to try and defeat at all.
Someone put me on to, I think it might have been Kelly actually, put me on to a show called Art Detectives.
Oh,
it's only a 6 part. It's quite good. It's about it's a murder mystery, but the catch is that the guys it's the Heritage Crime Department, which starts off as one guy. The first episode, if people watch it, I thought I would go, oh no, here we go again. Oh Lord, of course. But it wasn't. The female push type thing and so on was that there was some bit there, and there was a bit of sort of putting a character down and the rest, but it wasn't. But that it worked within the story, and it was only because of the situation in the first one. After that, I've been that it's set in modern day. The fact that one of the lead characters is female is the problem. It's only 6 episodes, but I quite enjoyed it. I think it was called Art Detectives. I think it's called.
Gonna try and see if I can find it somewhere. I do have, because I've had a chat with friends from a long time ago, from the first era of my life, not the third age of my life, but the first era. And one of the films we saw was called Nothing to Lose. And it is a film with Tim Robbins, just coming off the high of Shawshank Redemptions, and Martin Lawrence, just around the time where he's getting big with other films like Bad Boys with Will Smith and stuff like that. And I remember the film as being really funny, on point, and never going too much over the top, which I know that Martin Lawrence tended to do later on in films, especially in Black Knight. Even though I liked Black Knight, as in, I don't belong here. Get me out of here, please. But he still has to be a knight that happens to be black in the court. I think it's Court of Camelot or something like that. They're really going over the top with it, but everything
Riff on
is
the
still,
Yankee King Arthur's Court, I take it.
yeah, it's still within moderation, within what they're setting it up to be. But in the Black Knight, I'm not sure if you've seen it.
No,
I
I don't think I
think
have.
Martin Lawrence's character starts out as an American carnival, like medieval Renaissance fair tour security guide or something.
Oh, right.
So they happen to have that there, and then something happens to him. I'm not sure if he gets knocked out or actually gets shot or something, but something happens, and then he gets transported back to proper England. And literally, first his go is like, "Why aren't you speaking English?"
Yeah, I mean,
So
definitely Yankee, Connecticut Yankee Arthur's Court.
yeah, but it's small
But
fun
the
things
question
like
is,
that.
if he runs if he runs across a singing Bing Crosby, you know he's definitely doing it.
Yeah. But shall we round this up?
Yeah, why not? I mean, we've got Alex is twisting my arm in the background. He expects me to remember something that's going on in a month's time. He doesn't know me very well.
I believe on the 23rd of August
Yeah,
there will be the
23rd is
next.
Let's Talk Geeky.
Yes.
And a week or so after that, on the 1st of September, will be our next FFSI. This thing.
Yeah,
the next FFSI.
For F6.
For sake, it's only here.
So, yeah, I believe those are the things that were coming up. I don't really have much going on. Like I said, I'm going to watch the Nothing to Lose because I haven't seen it in a long time. See if it's still as funny as I remember it. But I do believe so because it's one of those films standing out. Other than that, I've been catching up with an author called Craig Ellenson. I wouldn't call him one trick pony, but he has 2 major book series out. One is called Convergence, which is the one I really like, and he has another one that is called Expeditionary Force, which is, if I begin with Expeditionary Force, it's the where he started cutting his teeth. It's humans discover Earth is not the only thing in the universe, but there is a lot of big master games going on. So there's like races that are stronger than other races and stronger than other races. So there's a whole political scheme and everything. But humans get tricked into this, dragged out to a planet. And on this planet, this poor sop called Joe discovers a beer can sized thing that contains a super artificial intelligence.
I keep seeing a few of these things in the feed of the site. I keep an eye on for audiobooks. There's not those things in there, so
yeah. But I will say it's quite enjoyable. The the AI and Joe have like a really good boys will be boys kind of relationship. They're constantly taking the mickey out of each other where they can. Obviously, Joe being a slight disadvantage because he's just a human, whereas Skippy the Magnificent, and yes, it's not a bragging thing. You can actually go to the author's website, and it's become such a meme that you can buy merch from his website, as in a beer can or a beer cozy that reads literally Skippy the Magnificent. There's about 18 books on the Expeditionary Force. I think I've reached book 9.
Yeah, I
so
think
far.
I've seen something like that on the name sounds familiar, but
Yeah. The other one is written is Convergence, which is not as much sci-fi but more magical. Still has kind of similar concept, but you have this poor guy called Casimir. Casimir Wolf is the hero's name, and he's a magician. And we're not talking David Copperfield. We're actually talking a magician that can actually magic.
yeah,
Well, a little bit, because apparently magic doesn't really exist, and magic has been gone from this place for a long time. But suddenly he gets to team up with a talking dog. And we're not talking intelligent talking dog. It's just a dog that can talk that still has everything dog does. So hunting squirrel. Sorry, I'm off now. I'm gonna hunt that squirrel. Well, it's a rodent. I need to hunt it. It's a rodent. I gotta kill it. I'm gonna catch it. But unfortunately, it turns out the rodent or the squirrel was a skunk. And then you have the discussion about you smell bad. And it's very clever. The dialogue is fantastic within it. So I would highly recommend checking out Convergence if you can do that.
besides there might be other look.
Yeah, I believe the 5th book in Convergence is coming out in 4 days' time. And they cover quite a lot. And I like the interpersonal stuff. I would actually say the interpersonal stuff between each the characters that he brings in, they are stronger, better, and bigger than kind of like the story. The story is just a vessel that takes you along what they need to get done. Them talking to each other, them interacting, is really well done.
Sounds good. Sounds interesting. Oh, excuse me.
And you will love Convergence because it has tons of history in it. It may not be archer history from Wales, at least not so far, but they definitely have American history before America was America. And they definitely have a lot of mainland Europe history. So there's that.
I've got a lot of Chris. Yeah, I've got a lot of Chris Nuttall's books. PJ. Oh, good. I first actually came across him. God, 19 in the. I've read about the first 3 or 4 of the art world ones. 19 already. Wow. He I actually first came across Chris Nuttall because he wrote a couple of books set in John Ringo's Posling War universe.
Right,
The first one we called Yeoman of England, which is about what happened in England during that particular war. And he's obviously a fan of genre because, for example, it's one of those when you go through and say, okay, so I get that. It starts off with the guy being read, with the main lead being read The War of the Worlds in school.
Yeah.
And
I see PJ is running off now, so have a good one, PJ.
Yeah. And some of the characters include a Sergeant Benton, a Mr. Lethbridge Stewart.
Mm-hmm.
There's some of the characters are named for Doctor Who characters and the like. Well, in that case, especially since this guitar's getting cold and I'm choking on my coffee. I think maybe I should try to work out how to do this end it thing.
Yeah, we should probably sign off now since.
Yeah. Okay, I'll get this right. Oh, hold on, no, don't need to do that. It does that, it doesn't matter.